In 2019, I found myself in Amsterdam with a group of scholars from the US, Jamaica, and the Netherlands. I had just finished my master's program, where I was deep in critical race theory before it became taboo and started trending on Twitter. I was imagining a new social work curriculum, rooted in racial justice and radical healing. And I'll be honest, going into that trip, I felt scared and unsure about the state of the world. This is 2019. Bolsonaro had just become president of Brazil. The Amazon was burning. A white supremacist had live-streamed his attack on a mosque in New Zealand. Brexit was happening, and we were seeing a surge in asylum seekers at the US southern border, a surge in xenophobia, and a surge in ignorance and apathy. Everything felt so heavy, and I was beginning to think that this was as bad as it could get, which, LOL, hello 2020, didn't see that coming. But just when I thought I'd feel this way forever, there was a shift. During that trip, my mentor, Dr. Frank Tuitt, one of the co-leaders for the group, brought up Audre Lorde's famous quote, "The master's tools cannot dismantle the master's house. For they may allow us temporarily to beat him at his own game, they will never enable us to bring about genuine change." That's interesting. The master's tools cannot dismantle the master's house. Then does that mean we need new tools? And are we not also tools too? If so, then what change must occur within us? I remember returning back to the United States feeling reinvigorated. I had a more expansive sense of what was possible in our fight for social justice. I didn't have a name for it at the time, but I now understand what moved me. What fundamentally shifted my perspective was the way that that trip activated my radical imagination. Radical imagination is a tool to reimagine ourselves in society time and time again. It's the audacity to live in the world as it is while dreaming something different and believing that dream is possible even when you cannot see it. It's about being humble enough to ask questions of ourselves and of each other. It's about being courageous enough to learn and unlearn. It's so different than what we were taught in school, right? Where we were taught how to analyze and analyze and analyze, which essentially means taking things apart. But when did we learn how to put things back together? How to construct something new that's never existed before with no real roadmap or directions? Radical imagination is the instinct that was taught out of us, but is a skill we most desperately need for a liberated future. It can be used in any area of your life. For me, that's social justice work, especially my work around racial equity and healing. Coincidentally, in 2020, my dear friend Bobby Lefebvre reached out to me with an intriguing idea. In addition to being Colorado's poet laureate, and the first one of color at that, Bobby is a cultural worker, a mezcal drinker, and an overall dope human being. Well, Bobby received a grant from the National Association of Latino Arts and Culture to create a project to foster radical imagination in racially just systems. He just performed at an event I'd held earlier that year where he'd been moved by my presence and ability to facilitate. And because I too am a dope human being, as well as charming, he brought me in to co-create these conversations. Together, we created Proyecto Sobremesa, Radical Imagination, Accountability, and the Future, or the Radical Imagination Game. It's a way to inspire radical imagination and is an act of radical imagination itself. So picture this. Bobby and I take a list of local BIPOC cultural workers and artists and select 8 random participants. We send out a thoughtful invitation to folks, letting them know what to expect. That they'll be wined and dined at the beautiful Museo de las Americas. We invite participants to dress in a way that makes them feel powerful and authentic. On the day of the event, Bobby and I set up the space with flowers, candles, and good music. As the guests arrive, they're served themed drinks designed by our mixologist. If you're starting to feel FOMO about not being there yourself, totally understandable. After all of the guests arrive, we transition to an intentionally set table. Bobby introduces the intentions for the night and the chef for our multiple course meal. We invite a guest to share a song, a poem, or a prayer to get us started in a good way. There's usually a mezcal toast, and then Bobby and I bring out 2 bowls. One bowl contains strips of paper for pillars for our liberated future. They include words like abundance, imagination, joy, and justice. We arrived at these pillars over conversations at Bobby's, scribbling on paper on the floor while sipping mezcal. Perhaps you're noticing a theme here. And we tell the guests that these are the values that shape our radically imagined and racially just world, but that they must be paired with accountability. The work we do to prevent, intervene, respond to, and heal from the harm caused by systems of oppression. The second bowl contains strips of paper with sentence stems designed to increase self-awareness. They include phrases like, what is your commitment to, and how do you practice, and what is your dream for? Bobby draws from his bowl of pillars, I draw from mine of sentence stems, and together we pose a question to the group. For example, what messages have you been taught about spirituality? Many times, participants would share how growing up in a particular religious tradition often warps their sense of spirituality, but how spirituality is really that which feeds and fills your spirit. Each time a participant realized that reframe, they physically shifted. It was so powerful to witness. We pull again. I draw. Who do you talk to about? Bobby draws abundance. Who do you talk to about abundance? The room goes silent. Because who do you talk to about abundance? We don't talk about it nearly enough, especially Black abundance. Shout out Kiese Lehman. But when we do, thank you. But when we do talk about it, it feels so juicy. Whenever we play the game, my favorite prompts are about abundance and joy. My favorite moments are the ones when participants are so moved by the conversation, their eyes shine. The moments when a participant's response makes us sigh in resonance or roar with laughter. The rare moments of silence when all we can do is look around the room at each other in awe and appreciation. One of our participants recently shared that these conversations inspired him to completely shift his career. He went from being the senior vice president at a bank to being his company's first ever director of diversity, equity, and inclusion. He said that these conversations helped him really think about who his authentic self was and what he truly wanted to create in the world. His partner said that he talked about the game incessantly for weeks, that there was a new energy to him that made him excited about his work in a way that she'd never seen, that he'd become more sure of himself, a better friend and partner, that spending a few hours activating his radical imagination quite literally changed his life. Changed mine. It changes mine daily. It helped me rediscover that feeling I'd felt in Amsterdam. It's a feeling I want to spread and continue spreading as long as I can. It takes a lot of creativity and strength to imagine a world that doesn't exist. It's even harder to do so when living in a world filled with so much suffering and oppression. And to do so with others in the same room, that takes vulnerability. The radical imagination game creates space for collective courage and curiosity. It inspires me to choose creativity and wonder over fear and despair. It makes me courageous enough to ask, what if, and why not, and with who? It's become my daily journal practice. And in some ways, it made me more prepared for the global crisis that emerged in 2020. Crisis blows open the door of what is possible. It is our job to hold open that door of possibility as far and as wide as possible. Because there are a multitude of innovative solutions to the many issues we face. No one of us will have all of the answers, nor should we expect ourselves to. Instead, let's try to be as creative as we can be together. Let's try to reimagine our futures again and again and again. Thank you.